All right. Nicky Mill, what's up, brother?
What's up? How's it going?
It's good, man. So, are you in Colorado right now?
I'm in Colorado. Yeah.
Okay.
We
So,
are we're waiting for the green light to go down to the Keys, but it's
yeah,
not coming.
I think we're all waiting for that. So, hey, real quick, a funny story is I have a family friend that when this all started, they were actually like renting a house in the Keys, and they were down there for a couple weeks just on vacation. And then this whole virus thing started, and they basically called the owner of the house and said, "You cool if we stay for another month because of the quarantine thing?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So now they've been there for almost 2 months, just
Oh
just
gosh.
hunkered down in Key Largo.
Are they fishing?
Yeah, they're fishing. They're fishing. They're not huge fishermen, but they're doing what they can.
Oh man, I wish I was them.
Right? Quarantine in the
Yeah.
Keys, not bad, huh?
I know. So my father and I every year we rent a house down in Ramrod Key for just over a month, all of May and a little bit into June. And we actually called our realtor, and she said that if we're renting a house more than 35 or 40 days, then we can head down there regardless of the quarantine, because that's kind of like the limit of part-time residential. But now with this roadblock up in Key Largo, we can't even get down. So
Yeah.
we're stationed up here in Colorado, which is not a bad location to be, because we're still fishing, we're hiking, we're shed hunting. We're doing all the things that we love to do. Nothing's really stopping us. There's no hurdle, and there's just less people out on the river, so it's actually pretty nice.
Right. No, yeah, I bet. And I know that whole thing is crazy with I mean, I don't know what it's like out there for you guys right now, but the crossing state lines and stuff, like believe it or not, so my vehicle, I have a Toyota Tacoma, my truck and my ID is still Florida. So, and I'm not there right now. I'm back home in Delaware where I'm originally from, but so technically like I could still go back there cuz they can't let you not go home, but I don't know how that works with visiting and all that stuff. But yeah,
Right.
pretty wild, man.
Well,
Pretty
my
wild.
my my father's girlfriend just flew into Aspen from Fort Lauderdale, so you can
Okay.
fly.
Okay.
Well, you can fly, but regarding the Keys, you can't get down that you can't get past that checkpoint unless you show taxes.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, man, I everybody's going through the same stuff right now, so that's kind of enough about the virus. We're all tired of talking about it, I'm sure. But dude, I appreciate you jumping on. My mission with this whole thing is to just talk to people that are doing their thing and loving what they're doing, and kind of taking no prisoners, if you will.
right.
And we've talked a couple times. We connected because I do some work with Waypoint and all of the outdoor fishing stuff that they do, and obviously you're a co-host with your dad and produce the Millhouse podcast, um, which is all things outdoors. So I just wanted to chat with you, man, and just learn a little bit more about what you're doing. Because if you scroll through your Instagram, which I had to creep a little bit, scroll through the Instagram, you got pictures with like David Goggins, Roger Federer, Bradley Cooper. I'm like, what does this cat do, man? So like, because I love it, and I feel
Yeah.
like I'm very similar. A lot of interests, a lot of passions. So tell me what you got going on, man.
Yeah, well, just I'm the luckiest kid in the world. I've had two really inspiring, great parents, and I've traveled the world with my father, fishing all over the world. I've traveled with my mom, going to tennis events and sporting events. I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky to have done the things I've done at age 25, and just along the way met really inspirational, cool people. Like you were saying, we were in Indian Wells. I was in the gym in Indian Wells, and David Goggins just walked in. That's just a coincidence, and I was like, oh my god, it's Goggins. I
Yeah,
got to get a photo
that's
with him.
crazy.
I don't really get starstruck with many people, but when Goggins walks in a building, that's something else.
No doubt.
And then yeah, so my mother was a professional tennis player, so I've traveled with her, been to Wimbledon, I've sat in the Royal Box, I had lunch with William and Kate. I've done weird, cool things that, some might not think is cool, but
Yeah.
that's just goes with having a parent that was a famous athlete at one point, and met Roger Federer along the way, and Serena Williams, and out here in Aspen, local Lance Armstrong. We play a lot of golf with Lance. So it's just, I hate to like name drop and stuff, but that's
No,
just along the way, you just meet cool, inspirational people. And, with my dad and mom, they're friends with these guys. And so I just, whenever I tag along, I meet them, and, they're, some of them have become friends. So it's been very cool.
yeah, and that's awesome. it's it's such an interesting, like you said, man, that's so cool that you said you're the luckiest kid on earth. I mean, that's
Yeah, I
a
really am.
great perspective. But it is, man, it makes for an interesting path so far. 25, I mean, I'm not that much older than you, and it just makes for a super interesting path that's probably giving you a lot of opportunities to learn things and have experiences that you never would have otherwise.
Right. Right. Yeah. And also too, is everyone looks up to these people like idols and like gods, but when you actually really start to know somebody, and especially if they're famous, you kind of see their flaws, and maybe they weren't the same person who you thought they were, and your views kind of change. And everyone's human. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's like everyone's human, everyone's a person, no one is better than anyone else. And so you kind of see their personality traits, and maybe you click with them, maybe you don't. But yeah, it's been very cool to meet these people.
no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, it is, man. I've fortunate enough to have some similar experiences, and ditto, man. They're normal people just like the rest of us, and they were able to capitalize on some gifts that they're given,
Yeah,
and
right,
that's awesome. And
right.
yeah, man. So, dude, so yeah, you've done all this traveling, and you've met some cool people, and you know, I like to tell people because I do some crazy things as well, and people always ask me, they're like, "What do you do? Like, what is your job?" And
Yeah,
sometimes I coach football, and sometimes I'm doing fishing stuff, and sometimes it's waypoint, and I feel like you're kind of similar in that regard, and it kind of makes for a fun filled life.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly, I've had the desk job. That's not for me. I'm trying to avoid that at all costs. So I just kind of dabble here and there, and trying to figure out how to make money and how to keep the ball rolling. So for instance, right out of college, I was working for the USTA, which is the United States Tennis Association, up in White Plains. And that was a cubicle desk job. I hated that. I worked that until, I think I worked that for like 4 months. And then um, I worked at a branding agency in New York City, in Manhattan. My girlfriend went to school in NYU, and she basically gave me the ultimatum after college. And so I moved up there. I got a job in Manhattan at a branding agency, and that was fun. I learned a lot. And then,
Was that what is that where some of your because you seem like with the Millhouse podcast seems like you're a fan of storytelling. So is that where some of that has come from?
yeah, for sure, definitely. But the storytelling comes from just hanging out with my father, and
Okay.
and my father's friends, and after fishing, grabbing a beer and just chatting about. I just love the romanticizing about the outdoors, and fishing and hunting. I just fish talk is half the game when in fishing. I just love chatting with interesting people about their past and their stories. But the branding agency, it was my good buddy Panos, who's a fellow tarpon nut. He gave me the opportunity to come on board and be a project manager. So I did that for a while, and that was great. I learned a lot, loved working with him. And then I've been a fishing guide for the last 6 years in Colorado in the summers. So I guide out here trout fishing. And last fall, I had the opportunity to work on the Deadliest Catch TV show, which was like, I couldn't pass that up.
All right on.
Um, yeah, so just a connection through my mother. They needed a PA, and I was like, you know what? I'll probably never have this opportunity again. So I went
Yeah.
up there, went to Dutch Harbor, which is a crazy freaking place, man. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever go back. It's just nuts out there. Everyone on the island is, when I say this, I'm being completely honest with you, is an ex-convict or an ex-addict. It's just a
Wow.
rough way of life up there. And those crabbers make a lot of money. They'll make, the deckhands make 20 grand, 30 grand in 15 days when they fill their quota of crabs, and they go back to Dutch Harbor and they blow their money at the bars and
Wow.
get in fights. And, when I was there, there were 3 overdoses in my hotel and 2 people died,
Wow.
just when I was there for a month. So a lot of them are, sadly addicts, and it's a rough way of life, but I'm
Yeah.
glad I did it, and I wouldn't have changed anything. And yeah, that was a wild trip.
I bet, man. I bet. Yeah. So that's like, it's not exactly the same, but there's some similarities there with the Keys. I mean, the Keys has
Yeah,
the tourism and the travel that probably Dutch Harbor doesn't, but
yeah,
um, there's definitely some of those stories down in the Keys as well. That pirate salt life,
for
um,
sure. Yeah.
and you have experience down in the Keys as well. You said you guys rent a house down there. Did you ever live down there at all?
Never lived down there. I grew up in South Florida. I grew up just north of Fort Lauderdale.
Okay,
So I just, it was always 2 hours, 2.5 hours away to go down to the lower Keys. And so
sure.
we migrated down there during tarpon season in the spring. And when I never lived down there.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, so I was obviously I know about your guys' podcast through Waypoint stuff, um, and I actually just listened to the one with Hunter on the Captain's Collective. He had you guys on his, and
Yep.
that was awesome. That was awesome. I think he's a really good storyteller, and then bringing you and your dad in was just was awesome. It was a great just to sit down and listen to it and learn about not just fishing things, right? It's what about like kind of like what you're saying, the fish talk and all the things that fishing with people brings you,
Right.
which is awesome. So if you had to pick something, I know you're in Colorado now. If you had to pick, would you fly fish guide in Colorado? Actually, where are you? Which river are
Just
you?
outside of Aspen. So
Okay,
it's in between Aspen and Basalt. And the
okay.
river's called the Roaring Fork and the Frying
Yep.
Pan.
Awesome, right on. So I've never been out there, not yet. Plan to very soon. But so if you had to pick that environment or the Keys, I know it's completely different, and you've probably been asked that before. But what's like? Give me your. Let's say this. Don't pick one, but give me your highlights of both places.
Now I'll pick one for you.
Okay.
I mean, there's just there's you can't you when you're talking about fly fishing, especially fly fishing in salt water, the Keys is the pinnacle. There's nothing higher in my book than the Keys. I mean, um, that's it. That's the Wimbledon of all tennis. Going down and guiding in the Keys for tarpon and bonefish and permit. You can't. I think that's the tip of the iceberg. And so if I had to pick, it'd definitely be that. But I just, you know, I feel like an intruder. There's so many Western guides, and I grew up in South Florida, so I don't really feel like a Western guide at all. But there's so many out of towners coming down to the Keys, and I can just feel the pressure that the locals, the conchs, get on a yearly basis. And these people that are a trout guide for 5 years, and they think they can go down to the Keys and become a guide and get a skiff, and you know which is fine. I mean, because it's public water, I have no problem with it. But I also see that I just, I don't feel 100% comfortable going down there and guiding,
Yeah,
and I never thought of it. I never really thought of it 100%. Like, I'm probably going to do that, but yeah, it's always in the back of my head.
sure.
I'd love to go down there for 2 or 3 months and guide the tarpon season. But then again, I'm not fully comfortable in doing that.
Yeah, no doubt. I totally get what you're saying, and when those guys come in, and I agree to say there's not anything wrong with it, but it definitely kind of, to put a word to it, I guess, dilutes the brand. You know what I mean? Or like dilutes the camaraderie that already exists there with the guys that have been doing this for 30 plus years.
Right.
So no shame on newcomers. I mean, in the back of my head, I've thought about it as well, and I have nowhere near the experience of, you or any of these other guys. But I'm like, man, what a life. I mean, I work with Tom Merlin very closely, and
Right.
I mean, he did it for a long time, and that's somebody that, guys like that are a dime a dozen down there. You kind of have this respect for them that you don't want to step on their turf almost.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you
Well,
grew up down there. Go ahead.
Tom was a Western guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
he made it work out. I mean, but yeah, just like, to be honest, when I was a kid, when all my friends were in middle school and high school looking up to idols, these athletes like Tiger Woods, and I was looking up to Steve Huff. I was,
Yeah.
because I was immersed in that culture, in that fly fishing world. I was looking up to um, people like Timmy Hoover, Steve Huff, Kevin Guerin, all these guys that don't have Instagrams. And we were over at Steve Huff's house, and he doesn't even have an email. You know, it's and I really respect these people, and I'd never want to feel like I'm I'm a threat in any way. And so, yeah, it's just like it's too close to my heart. I don't
Right.
know. Just something about it, but
I get you. No, I like the word you used. It's like an intruder.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I like that word a lot. And maybe, yeah, I guess with your guys' podcast, the storytelling part of it kind of fits or it scratches your back or scratches your itch for it a little bit.
a little
Obviously,
bit.
you'll
Yeah,
still go do it, and still go fish down there, but yeah, the storytelling part of it kind of gets you to be in that environment a little bit. Sounds like.
right. Yeah, for sure. It does. Definitely.
So yeah, I mean the podcast that you guys are doing, it's I love the tagline, and I don't know if it's like in the description or anything or where I saw it, but it's not just a fishing podcast.
Yeah.
And I love that because with me, like not knowing and talking, I've talked to you a few times. Obviously, I don't know your dad or your parents or anything like that, but um, you get into it, and it's definitely not just a fishing podcast. It is like a round life experience story. And so, what's
Yeah.
that like? And your dad has mentioned in some of your episodes that this was kind of your baby, like your project. So, what was the vision for that of like putting this together?
I just thought that my dad had such great connections in the fishing world and the fly fishing world. Especially down south in the Keys, and a lot of these people are getting older. 70, 80 years old, and there's such great stories that a lot of people have not heard, and these guys are getting older, and I would hate to have them pass with their stories just maybe in one old book sitting on a shelf somewhere, and just wanted to make it accessible. And I was just really passionate about sharing these people's stories, these pioneers and these legends of the Keys and Homosassa. I've been wanting my dad and I to do this for the last 5 or 6 years. And, my dad's biggest concern was going back to work.
Yeah.
He traveled all over, had a fishing show, and he really didn't want to go back to work. But I made it where I made it seem like it's just going to be, you talking to your friends about fishing. I'll do the production, I'll edit it. Don't worry about anything like that. And then once we started doing the first and second podcast, he started to see the feedback he was getting, and how important these stories were to other people, and he started to feel the juice.
Yeah.
Um, and then it started to become more and more appealing to him, and now he's fully on board. And we've gained traction, and I'm liking what we're doing, and hopefully we can do more of it. But this coronavirus, it's kind of put a halt a little bit on the
Totally.
interviews we can do with these elderly people. They
Right.
don't want us coming into their house, so we're a little bit on hold. But yeah, it's just it's been a great journey so far.
Yeah. And I know it's you guys are really just kind of in the first stretch of it. I mean, you haven't gotten in real deep yet, which is exciting that there's going to be a lot more to come. But have you thought about, like, I've even thought about this for just what I'm doing so far, is it's going to be exciting at a certain point to look back and see that log of episodes and the names that were involved and the people that were talking. At some point, it's going to be really cool to look back and say, man, I was a part of that. Like, I remember that conversation. Or how awesome was it to have this person sit down and talk with us? Like, have you
Yeah.
kind of zoomed out big picture and thought about that in a year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, not so much just because my head's in the pit right now. I'm kind of in the trenches, but I think I will start to look in the future and a little later. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, just being, you can't. There's no one greater and higher in the priority list than Steve Huff and Tom Evans and Flip Pallett and Chico. I mean, we've already got the biggest pioneers in South Florida, essentially, or some of them. So it's just like, where do we go from here?
yeah,
That's kind of like our struggle right now is we're gonna have to broaden our scope a little bit and not just um, not just get the pioneers and the legends, because there's only so many. So
right.
it's like that's where the tagline comes into play. It's not just a fishing podcast. So hopefully we'll start to broaden our scope into hunting. Maybe, I mean, we have some friends in Aspen who have climbed Everest 7 times. Mountaineering, downhill ski racing, just maybe even like we have a mutual friend, Kevin Costner, that lives here, who has a big ranch here, and he's a big outdoorsman, as you may know. But just chatting with people, and if it doesn't really have to be involving fishing, and if they can
Right.
get a couple of key little tips or golden nuggets along the way, it's like, you know, that's great.
Yeah, man. Totally. I totally agree with that mission. That's part of, like I said, I think right before we started recording was, I don't know who listens to this. I don't know how many people listen to this. Obviously, I can see the numbers and stuff, but if anything, this is therapeutic for me. And
Right.
like, just being involved in your story and learning about you and what you do. And it fills me up. Like, I'm like juiced. Like, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's a dude that's doing these cool things and loving what he's doing, and all the other conversations that I have. So it seems like that's kind of part of your guys' energy as well.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And it's like I said, it's been a great journey, and I hope to continue doing what we're doing for many years to come, because I think we're onto something.
Yeah, no doubt. That's awesome. So the podcast obviously is a piece of what you do in your life. It's not everything. You said that you're a part-time fly guide in Colorado, and I think are you doing archery stuff as well?
Yeah, I guided for the first year, or first I actually only guided for a week, but yeah, my first guiding week was last fall, archery
Okay.
elk hunting, which was great.
Nice, nice. How was that?
It was good. I have the opportunity to guide this private ranch over in Kremlin, Colorado, and um, you know, it was like a double guide deal. So my dad came over with me, and we are both guiding this guy from Texas, and he was way overweight, not athletic, the typical tree stand hunter you see on TV. And so he came over, and he's never been elk hunting before, and my dad and I were just looking at each other like, oof, this is gonna be a tough one.
Yeah.
But he did great. And on the second day, we called in a bull to 40 yards, and he didn't even draw back his bow. And I was right next to him, like, dude, draw back your bow, draw back. And he drew back his bow, and he took his time and shot. And long story short, he missed. And so actually he hit the animal, and but it wasn't a gut shot. It wasn't that bad of a miss, thank God, because that's my worst nightmare. But long story short, if you draw blood on this property, you get one chance to kill a cow elk after. So the next day we went back, and we killed a cow. So he got his meat. He was happy. But yeah, it was, I think I enjoyed it more than being a fishing guide, because there's less interaction, but there's more lessons to be learned
Hmm.
in the mountains. You know, the hardship, the adversity if everyone has to overcome. Just being out on a beautiful place, hiking with magnificent animals, and it's just so hard. It's so tough, and it really opens these people's minds when they come out to the Western states, whether it's mule deer hunting or elk hunting or moose hunting. It's just, and you know, a lot of these people save for 2 3 years 4 years to come out and get this one opportunity, so it means so much to them, as opposed to a trout guide, you know, a
Yeah.
trout guided trip where it's, you know, say $300 a pop. So it's just, it's very special.
Yeah. No, no doubt. Very intimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. You said there's less interaction, meaning like obviously when you're the guide on a boat, you kind of have to um, put the red nose on, for lack of a better term. Like you have to
Right.
be the comedian, the fishing guide. You have to be all those things.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Like I say, you're a trout fishing guide. You're an adult babysitter.
yeah, yeah, and so that's cool. Yeah, less interaction, more intimate. Yeah, that's very cool. I've never. I'm actually not a big hunter, so I don't know what
Yeah.
that world's a lot about. And I've never done anything uh, out west, so that might have to hit you up on that at some
Oh
point.
man, if have you tarpon fished before?
Yeah,
Fly
yeah,
fishing with tarpon?
yeah. So
Oh,
I mean, yeah. So like, what's that like? I mean, is there the fly fishing for tarpon? I mean, you've already picked, but like archery, big game hunting, tarpon fly fishing.
there's no comparison.
Okay.
Archery elk hunting is number one by far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
And it might just be because I've done so much tarpon fishing, but
Yeah.
hearing an 800-pound animal come screaming in at 20 yards, and you're trying to kill him with a sharp stick and get meat for a year and a half, it's just, it's like you can't even talk about it. You can't
Yeah.
even put that into words. It's so exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, man. Well, hey, we've been on here for a little bit. I know you got stuff to do. Nikki, I appreciate you jumping on, man. And probably the people that know me and that are going to listen to this, they're going to be like, dude, you're a football coach. Like, what do you know about outdoors and this guy and everything? So, but that's my mission is,
Right.
I'm interested in all these things and I'm passionate about them and love bringing the story to life. So it's awesome to learn more about you, man. And look forward to talking with you again soon.
Cool. Well, thanks, Chet. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed our convo.
All right, Nikki. See you, bud.
See ya.